Hello everyone, welcome to our first MIT App Inventor class. My name is Emmanuel, and in this class we're going to be taking our first step into the world of app development. Don't worry if you have never written any single line of code before. By the end of this class, you will understand the basic feature of MIT App Inventor and how we can use them to create our own apps. So quickly, let's head into the home page for MIT App Inventor. So you will need your browser and a strong internet connection. So quickly, on your browser here, just search for MIT App Inventor. Alright, so the first suggestion here is what we're going to work with. We click on that. Alright, so we have a create apps. So we're going to create an app. Alright, on clicking that button, you're going to be required to sign up if you do not have an account before. Alright, so I'm going to sign up with my Gmail account. So I'm going to sign up to my Gmail account. Yes, so we will continue this process. So upon successful sign up and registration, you're going to go to the interface of the MIT App Inventor. Okay, before that, you have to accept terms. Right, so we accept the terms of service. Okay. Alright, so we have this screen here that says welcome to MIT. Welcome to App Inventor. Alright, so we just ask them not to show us again. Anytime we come back to the site. Alright, so there's a screen for tutorial. Let's just close this. Alright, so right here, this is the App Inventor interface. Alright, so what is MIT App Inventor? So MIT App Inventor is a platform that allows us to create mobile applications using visual programming. Instead of typing complicated code, we use blocks. Think of the blocks like pieces of puzzle. We drag them and connect them together and use them to tell our application what to do. Alright, so going further, let's go ahead to create our first application. Alright, so this, if you look at this, there's no application created. By the time we continue, you get to understand that the list of your project you've created will be formed here. Alright, so we'll go ahead to click on new project. So we're going to call this our project. We have been asked to give it a name, so we're going to call it my first app. Alright, so be sure always not to leave any space. Alright, we don't recognize spaces in MIT App Inventor. So if you leave a space, you're going to be prompted that there would be no space. So we just use my first app. Use capital letter for each first word. My first app. Alright, so we also click on OK. We're going to go inside our project, and what we are seeing right now is the designer interface. Alright, so the area we are looking at right now is called the designer. Alright, you see right here where it's written designer. So this is the designer interface. So the designer interface is where we decide what our application will look like before we go and start adding anything, like telling it what to do, giving it actions, giving it a brain. Right, so this every app you come across has an interface, has the appearance. So that's what we do in the designer. We give it buttons, we give it just think of it like a building. You use blocks and you're trying to now use pens to actually give it beautification. So that's what we do in the designer. We actually have this architecture for our app right here on the designer. Alright, so going further, let's just quickly look at some of the things we have here. So first of all, we have the palette. Alright, so think of the palette as our toolbox. Inside the toolbox, we have different components that we can use to build our apps. Alright, so right here is our palette. We have different toolbox. Under the user interface, if I click on user interface, you see we have buttons, we have checkbox, circular progress. By the time we continue, you're going to see circular process. Think when you're trying to load, you don't just want the user to hold on while waiting. Use circular process to actually notify that okay, there's a loading process. We have date picker, labels, images. Alright, so there are a lot of them in our palette. That's for the interface. There's web viewer, time picker, text box. So what's the text box? A text box is a box that allows any user who is using our app to actually put text input, to collect text input from our user. Like for an example, a form, okay, a web form where you can input your name, your phone number, your email address. So we use text box to actually to do that. But so this is the text box we are looking at. So this is the text box. So we click and drag to our screen. So this text box allows us to actually receive information, text information from our users. All right, so going further, we have other ones. We have labels. We have labels right here. So labels is actually used to describe, it's just used to describe any component of the screen. Right, this is our label. We have images, we have buttons, we have checkbox, right, where we can actually checkbox. Let's say we are trying to do a to-do app, a to-do list. So we can use text box to actually do a to-do list app. Alright, so after the palette, also going down after the user interface, we have layouts, basically absolute layouts. When we continue with the class, you are going to see how all of them is. So in case during the classes I mentioned, go to your palette, you actually know where the palette is. So also we have the media, drawing, animation, there are a lot of them here. Alright, so storage, I think these are the few ones we are going to be using most of the time. So we have storage and media, and layout and interface. Right. Okay, so after the palette, another thing we have is the viewer. Alright, so right here what we have, this phone interface you're looking at, is called what we call the viewer. This is what actually gives us the appearance of our app. It gives us a more like a testing ability to see how we actually building our app. So it's a phone screen. It's actually a phone screen. This is where we can set our application tools, like letting it add some things, like just like I was doing here. We drag it and drop here. We drag and drop. So basically this is just what the viewer is. So going further, there is another aspect I want us to look at. Alright, so we have the properties. This is our component. Right here we have every component that is inside my screen one. If you look at it, and they are arranged in order of alignment. The first property I have here is the text box. Going further is the label, the image. Then we have button one. We have absolute arrangement. This is layout component. We have checkbox, two checkbox, and the translator. The translator is actually a non-visible component, so we can't actually see them inside the screen. They are just there, but they are non-visible. Alright, so quickly let's just delete this and delete some of this component we bring. Then going for that, right far the left this side, we have the properties. Alright, so let me for example click on button one. So we have the properties section right here. So the property section allows us to customize our components. Alright, to give it special appearance, give it, let's say for instance, we can change the font of the text for this. We can change it to a bigger font. Let's say I give 28. Alright, so basically what the property is just to give us a ability to customize our components, so it doesn't remain the way it comes default. We can customize it and do a lot of things for it. Alright, so we can also edit our text right here. The text inside our button, we can edit it to click me. So let's say for instance we want to change the text into it so that it doesn't remain with the default. We can come here and do that. So that's what the property actually allows us to do. We can also change the width. Alright, we can change the width, the height, the color, and many other properties. Alright, so there are a lot of things we could do right here in the properties. Alright, we can also change alignment. You notice the alignment for the text is center. I can make it to be left, so I can make it to be right also, though we are not seeing the changes because the width is actually automatic. So let's say for instance, now on the width here, let me just explain this. We have the fill parent, we have pixels, and we have percent. Alright, so if I set my width to fill parent means it's going to fill up the width of this button, is going to fill up the screen. Alright, so it's going to fill up the screen down to the edge, from the edge to edge. This is what fill parent means. Also, I can also use the percentage. Alright, if I use 100%, if I say fill 100% of the screen, it's going to also fill 100% of the screen to the brim. Alright, so I can also use, if you fill with 50%, it's going to just fill 50% of the screen. Alright, so basically that's how the width. Also for the last one, the pixels. If you notice, our screen is a screen of 320 pixels by what 650 pixels. That's the width is 320, while the height is 650. Alright, so if I actually want to still make my button to fill the screen using the pixel, I can say 320, and it's going to fill up the whole screen for the what the 320. And for the height, I can also make the height to be what 650 for pixels, 650 for the pixels, and it just fills up the whole screen. The reason you couldn't fill it because there are some components right here, so you actually cannot occupy that space. So let's just skip it back to automatic, so that it just takes the size of the text. Alright, so let's quickly remember that we have seen the palette, we have seen the viewer, we have the components. So let me show you this. We have the palette, we have the viewer right here, we have the components, and the property that allows us to customize the components. So for a quick recap, now the palette is our toolbox where we get every component. It's our toolbox. All our components are inside our palette. So this viewer is our phone screen, while the component, it shows us everything we have added. Not forgetting that there's going to be invisible components right down here. Then the property that allows us to customize other components. Alright, so quickly let's move over to the block section. I told you we started with the designer, so let's move over to the block sections right now. So but before we do that, let's quickly create a simple app here. Alright, so let's see. Let's just delete some of these. So I click on text box, I delete this. I just want to take out all of this, delete this. I want to click on this. I want to also delete this text box. I'm going to delete this. Okay, I want to have, then I want to make my label. I want to change our label to something. Alright, so I want to call that label, let's say welcome to my first app. Should we call it that? Is that going to be okay? Okay, where was it? Okay, so let's delete also this. So I'm going to add a label. Okay, we have a label here. So we're going to just change this label to hello. Okay. Hello world. Okay. We're going to change this to label. Right, so we have these two things. So quickly, let's go to our blocks. Right. Like I said before, our blocks is basically since we have actually go through the design application, we have designed our application, but just the only problem we have now is that our button does not actually do anything. If we click on it, it does nothing. So we can quickly tell our app what to do whenever we click the buttons. So that's why we are here on the block interface. So the block interface is where we program our application, and this is where things become really interesting. All right, so quickly I'm going to say, I click on, scroll down a bit, you're going to see the two components we have here, label 1 and label 2, and I'm going to click on our button, and I'm going to click on this button. So we can see a button here. The first block we have here says when button 1 dot click. All right, this is saying when button 1 is click, I want you to do something. All right, so that's what we can now code and say. All right, so quickly we want to just do a simple project. When button 1 is click, we want to set our label dot text. We want to set our label dot text. So I just go down to scroll for the reason I'm looking for label dot text is that the text attribute of our label is what we want to change. So we want to set our label dot text. So we'll go forward to the built-in blocks. Right here, the built-in blocks, we have the control, logic, the maths, metrics, text, lists, dictionaries, colors, variables, and procedures. By the time we continue with our classes, we're going to see how we can use most of these blocks. So I want to set our attributes to hello world, welcome to my first app. I want it to actually say that anytime we click the first button. So we're going to look for both our text. Since we actually want to bring out the text, we're going to just bring out a plain text here and drop this here. So I'm going to say hello world, hello world. Sorry, Hello world. Welcome to my first app. Sorry. Alright, so we're going to, so by the time we click the button, it's going to set our level 1, the text for our level 1 to hello world, welcome to our first app. So quickly, to actually test this, so by the time we continue building, we actually need a testing feature, because we can actually test it right here on our viewer. This is just a viewer to actually see what we're doing. So we actually need a tester. So this is where we actually need a Android or iOS phone to actually build test it. So we have 3 features to be able to test: AI companion app, emulator, and USB. Which I always advise the simplest method we go with is the AI companion. Alright, so if you click on the AI companion, you have a QR code where you can actually scan this code, and it will take you to a live featured version of what you have actually built. So I have the phone on my app. So once you have the phone, it's going to look like something like this. Let me quickly show you. Let me just search on this. So MIT App Companion. Alright, so you can search on your Play Store for the app. So the app actually looks like this. I want to show you the interface so that you see what we're looking at. So this is the interface of our companion app. So we have scan with QR code. So you connect with code and scan with QR code. Right, if you go back here, there's actually a code right here. This is the code you could use, or we use the scan. So by the time we scan, we can actually, once you scan the code, it's going to pick a live test of the app. So by the time you scan, you're going to see exactly what you have there. So you can click on the scan, and it's going to scan this. So I'm doing this right now. So if I scan this app, so you're going to quickly, you see a screen on the, you see a progress bar on your screen. It's telling you, okay, you're actually scanning. So by the time it loads up completely, you're going to see that feature. Alright, so I'm actually clicking the button right now, and I can see the text actually change. So this is what I want you to do. Try it on your own. Click on this button, and let's see if it actually works. Okay, so have the designer app. You might not be, you might want to play with the colors. Set this hello world to other things, and when you click me, go back to your blocks, and you could use any text of your choice. Alright, so remember, so this is our first MIT class. So today we've actually learned that MIT App Inventor is how to create a we've learned that MIT App Inventor is how we can create mobile applications. Alright, so we've also learned how to create a project, how to use the designer. Alright, say disconnected because I allowed my phone to close. How to use the designer, how to add components, how to change their properties, and how blocks allow to make our app interactive. Because if we are not gone to the block section to code, all we have been looking at is just a plain arrangement of components without performing any action. So the designer is for looks, right? Don't forget that the designer is for looks, while the blocks is for action. So in our next class, we are going to be looking, or rather we are going to be using what we've learned today to build our first free application. So looking forward to see you there. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next class. The designer is for looks, while the block is for action. Alright, so quickly let's go ahead to create a profile app. Alright, so I'm going to click on the project. I'm going to create a profile underscore app. So I'm going to create a new profile, a new project. So I'm going to create a new profile. Provider is going to just have our name, our professional title, about us, the skills, our skills, and then contact. I'm not going to use much. So I'll need an image to have us. First an image, then I need a label for my name, then for my professional title. Alright, so quickly let's just style this and see what we have. Now the first thing I want to do is I want to set my screen. I want to align the horizontal to the center. So my text will push the center. Also to my image, I want to upload an image here. I'm just going to click upload image. choose the file. It's going to take me to my system file manager. Alright, so I just want to use this image. Alright, feel free to choose any image of your choice, and be sure it's actually a PNG or a JPG file with at least 2 MB. Okay. So with at most 2 MB, sorry. And now I've uploaded the picture. You can see this right here. And so I can actually preview what I uploaded. Okay, see? This is what we selected is correct. So I close my preview. Right, so let's go on. But you notice the image is not showing, right? So head down to the picture, your properties of your image, where you have the picture here. Then if you notice the picture is showing none, you just have to click this and choose the picture we actually uploaded. Yeah. You notice the picture now comes back. So what we want to do now, I want to just size the picture. The height and the width is actually to automatic, so it's going to bring out the original size of it. Or we can actually resize this picture. It's just like trying to crop a picture or reduce the size. So let's give it the 100 pixel by 100 pixel. So it's going to fit our screen. I told us before that our screen is a 320 by 650 pixel. So by show, we are setting that if we reduce this by 100 by 100, it's going to fit in. Okay, 100 by 100. Right. Well then, so next is the text box here. Right, so I'm going to try to fold this. This is going to be my name. Right. I'm going to also use your name. Okay. Then this other label. This other label is going to be our professional title. So label is basically used to write text on our screen. So it's going to be our professional title. I'm going to write here coding instructor. It's coding instructor. Alright, so next I want to just make the name here a bit bigger. Alright, so I'm going to make it bold. Make the font size 25. No, sorry, 25. Alright, so also for the coding instructor, I want to change the color now. I don't want it to be black. Come to text color right here. Click on it, it's showing default. I want to choose blue, then I save. Alright. I want to make it a bit bold too. Alright, so next we want to do for the about me. So I want to create a similitude of a card, something that looks like a card. So that's why we need something like a layout. Alright, so let's come to our component, which is the layout. Alright, we have some arrangement here. I want to use a vertical arrangement. This is going to arrange things vertically for us. Alright, so also I want to work on the width and the height. So the height, let's keep the height automatic first, but let's make the width to take 90% of our screen. 90% of our screen. Okay, so we have this, and for the background of our layout, we also want to change it to be a bit light gray. Okay, and we have a layout here, so I just want to bring in some labels. I'm going to bring in, here's the label. Okay, I'm going to bring in a label. This is going to be about me, and this is going to be really the text on about me. We're going to drop it inside. If you notice, the text inside the layout box is not carrying the center alignment, because if I want to do that, I have to come back here and set it. But I do not want it to have a what's it called? I do not want it to have center align. I want it to be actually left aligned. So I'm going to call this here, rename this to about me. About me. Okay. So I'm going to just write some things right here and about me. Alright, so we can actually drag and increase the text box here so that we can have a view of everything we are writing. So okay, I am a coding instructor. Coding instructor. Sorry, I need to add. Okay, let me just add some things here too. And let me use the symbols instead. And Alright, so I can now comment, okay? And the designer, the developer, okay? Right, so you're passionate about building teaching young minds. Alright, passionate about teaching young minds. They just have a lot to do, okay? I can say, let me add something so I get to just have. No, not there. And I love to teach. Sorry, not teaching, I love to. Ideas into your digital solution. Alright, so we have this now. Now if you notice our text is actually writing all down to the what's it called? It's writing all down into our text box because we actually have not sized the width, the height. So any text that is actually going on, we can come and size the width, sorry. We can still give it the same 90% so that it doesn't go out of our box. So if I give it 90%, you see it comes down immediately. Then for the height also, now this way I now have to work on the height of my, this is called, the height of my alignment, my layout. So my height, I want to give it, let's say 50 pixel. If 50 pixel is much, we'll reduce it. Okay, it's not much. So let's see 100. Alright, 100 is okay. Or reduce it again to 80. 80 pixel. 80 pixel. 80 pixel. Alright, so 80 is okay. So my text for about me, I want to just make it a bit bold. And make it a bit bold. Okay, I scroll down, then I click on bold. So I want to give it a blue color. So I'm just going to scroll down and look for text color. I have text color. I'm just going to make it bold. Alright, so this is about me. Same process I did. I can go back to my layout, bring in a vertical alignment. Vertical alignments. Make the width to be 50. Also, no, I mean we used 80. 80. Make the width to be 9. Take 90% of our screen. Okay, 90% of our screen, and we have two labels. Two labels. Okay. I'm going to call the label, first label here, I'm going to call it skills. Skills. I'm going to change the text color to blue. I'm also going to make it bold, then for my label 2. I'm just going to write some skills. Okay, so for skills, we just write a few of them. Okay, let me start with MIT App. What's going on? What's not typing? MIT App Inventor. Alright, so I'm going to also call web design. Problem solving. Alright, so we'll add a little skill and time management as a skill. Alright, so also I'm going to make the height for this, the width for this 90%, sorry. 90% first. So I can take up our specs. Yeah. So lastly, we want to do the contact. What this one to stop? You want to stop here. I expect you to do the contact yourself. You just bring a contact, write your phone number, your email address, and maybe the address, your house address. So I would want to see a contact card for this. So this is where we're going to stop. In our next class, we're going to do a simple code. I'm going to add some screens into this. This is going to take us directly into our our contact pages. So until next time when we meet you, we continue from these classes. See you in the next session.